folks. Welcome to another episode of the Snowies Camping Show. You're joined, as usual, by myself, Ben, and my colleague here, Lauren. If you haven't already done so, please subscribe to our channel if it's the first time you visited to us, either on YouTube or your favorite podcast app, wherever you listen to your content. And if you want to join in on the conversation, we have an awesome Facebook group where all of our community, and you can be part of the conversation too, where we ask questions, answer questions, and just talk camping and hiking and being in the outdoors. Today's episode is about gear you don't need hiking.
Yeah.
Now, I haven't actually been on a big hike for a long time. I've done a few overnight hikes with kids recently, or I'll say recently, within the last probably 3 years, but they're limited to very shorter sort of overnight hikes, and we probably carry more gear than we need because we're not walking that far because the kids can't go very far. But
sometimes you might need a bit more gear with kids as well.
You do, yeah. So you end up carrying a bit more, and they can't carry much either, so you end up overloaded. But if it was an extended walk, which I've done lots of in the past, I always enjoyed looking at my gear, as you know, a bit of a
minimalist.
gear freak and weigh everything. I've got a spreadsheet with all my weights on it. I haven't used it for a long time. Bit of a minimalist, yeah, and but it is important. I think carrying less weight on your back, less is more when it comes to hiking, particularly because you've got to carry that for most of the day. If you're not weighed down with all the gear in your pack, you can just enjoy the scenery and being on the trail more so.
And I think it's one thing to like fully pack your bag and put it on your back and have a trot around your house. Then it's another thing to be still wearing that same bag in like 4 hours time when you're like clambering on your hands and knees up a hill. You know, so it's like,
and you're hot and
you're bothered and
the flies are bugging you.
Yeah.
And you get edgy. So what we sort of want to cover off today on
really painted an awesome picture there. Enticing picture.
I don't know, hiking's great. No,
hiking is awesome.
If you don't have a heavy pack, that's not what it's going to be like though, because you'll be able to walk upright and enjoy the walk up the hill, right? I enjoy walking uphill and downhill. But hey, we got to keep this episode not too long, so let's not get sidetracked.
That's true.
So when you're packing, you've written a few questions here. We've both read through it, but 3 questions to ask yourself: do I actually need this? Is it a just in case? Does something else I have already have a similar job? So items that do
like multi-purpose
items.
Yeah.
And what would I do if I didn't have this? I think they read through really good questions you've come up with there, and that's probably the best way to answer. Do I need this? I think So I've got this because of if this happens. But take a step back and think, if this did happen and I didn't have this, how else could I manage it, or what could I use? It's probably a good way to look at it, because you've then got to sort of think outside the square and go, maybe there's another way to do it. And then you realise actually I can get around that. I probably don't even need it.
Yeah.
But if it does happen, I can get around it for the
I'm
trip.
a massive, I think you're either an overpacker or you're an underpacker. And I feel like you're an underpacker and I'm definitely an overpacker. Like any adventures that we go on, I'm literally packing so much stuff, especially clothes, because I'm like, what if I get up and I feel like wearing this today and I don't have this, and what if I want that? And so I'm totally into the space saving sort of lighter weight stuff, but only because it means I can pack more stuff.
So you're a bit of a quandary there, aren't you?
Yeah, totally. So I'm and I like to sort of, I'm not a hoarder, but I like to collect. I'm just a bit of a bowerbird. So I'm a massive overpacker.
Right. I wouldn't have picked that. I would have thought you'd be fairly.
Yeah.
I don't know why, but I thought you would have been a light packer. But anyway, show's not about you.
It's not.
So you've got an example here, and I think this is really good.
Yeah. Go on then.
Multiple uses, we touched on things, and you've listed here smartphone. And it's funny, you sort of think smartphone, I don't need it when I go hiking, but it actually doubles as a guidebook.
Yeah.
Or quadruples. A camera, you can put books on there, and GPS as well. So smartphone's actually a good option.
Yeah, I mean, everybody has a smartphone these days, don't you?
Yeah.
Or don't they, I suppose. So it's like, for me, multiple, and considering I'm an overpacker, the multiple use thing is the biggest thing, because it means that I still can tick all the boxes of the stuff I want, but I'm actually only taking one thing. So I guess guidebooks maybe not so relevant if you're just hiking. If you're doing maybe multi-day hiking, especially if you're traveling overseas, not that anybody's doing a huge amount of that these days, but guidebooks are probably more relevant there than they would be if you're hiking within your own state or even your own country to a certain extent.
Yeah, I guess you might have things like a hiking, like the Larapinta Trail, for example, have got a map package. I don't know if that comes in digital form. Sorry, I just knocked my water bottle there. So you could have that on your phone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I have an app on my phone. I think it's called Libby. And that was a shout out for me by Sam. Obviously, we've mentioned a few times on the podcast. She's our big hiker here at Snowy's. And that is linked to the South Australian State Library and their huge catalogue of ebooks. So I can just borrow ebooks and just read them all within this app. So I don't necessarily have to purchase the books. I'm not paying for a subscription through Kindle or any of that sort of stuff. And it's something that I can just load up onto my phone and I don't have to take books with me because I can have several, I could have 4 or 5 novels preloaded on my book if I wanted, if I wanted to, on my phone, if I wanted to.
You can also use something like Avenza Maps and download the maps before you go. So
that's
they're
right.
on your phone. That's a really good app.
There's other apps you can use. Obviously, to a certain extent, it doubles as your maps, your GPS, guidebooks that are e-books as well as your fictional novels. It's just a small smartphone. I
would be interested in other people's thoughts on this though, because I do kind of pull back to if you've got a phone, you then also need a way to charge it. So you've got to take a solar panel or some way to charge it. But then I also sort of think, well, what happens if your phone fails or it gets wet and stops working? Then you need a map as well. So suddenly you might be in a situation where you're carrying a phone and a map and a compass. So.
I literally just put a note here.
Yeah,
after that to just say I would never just take a phone in place of a compass and a map. I would take it in place of all of those things and I would still have a map and a compass just tucked away somewhere.
Yeah.
I mean, even just if it's a little thumb compass or something, it doesn't have to be massive.
Yeah, just something to get your bearings.
Yeah. And that's obviously your backup if you need it.
Have a plan, I suppose, if you do need it to get out of whatever situation you're in.
But I mean, if you chuck your phone on airplane mode and you're only going away for, say, 2 nights, like you're going on a 3-day hike, going away for 2 nights, you wouldn't even necessarily need to worry about packing a solar charger. You could have, say, like a small 5,000 milliamp hour power pack with you, which would get you through, or even just a 2,000 milliamp one to top it up. But you chuck your phone on airplane mode.
Yeah, good point.
Depending on, if you're not listening to music and you're not taking heaps of photos.
Yep.
And you're only maybe reading, for an hour at bedtime at night or something, you're not going to chew through your battery.
Yeah, if it's a short trip, I guess it's going to be different for each trip. A longer trek might be a different story.
That's true.
I suppose, but, so you're not in place for a map or compass. I'm a big one for that. I always take a map and compass.
Yeah.
You made a note here, Ziploc bags I think are great. A multiple use item, a Ziploc bag does everything because it stores your food when you go there. It stores your map. It keeps your phone dry. It then becomes a rubbish bag after if you need it. You can store bits of nature that you pick up along the way if you're a hoarder.
And I do pick up bits of nature mostly when I'm allowed to.
My youngest daughter does that. We had like 3 shoe boxes full of nature, I think, by the time we got back from a recent trip. So.
That same. Every time I go away, I literally have a shoebox of nature. I bring home feathers and rocks and interesting sticks. The look on, I could feel that. I felt that. I felt that across the table.
You got a stick anyway. Yeah, but it's got that mark on it.
Yeah, exactly.
Anyway, getting sidetracked again. Now, clothing. Extra clothing, how many sets do you really need? Now, you're probably maybe not the right one to answer this, but I think clothing, you've got a set to walk in and a dry set for night.
Yeah. I can totally appreciate with hiking, definitely. Yeah. With camping, I'm useless, but with hiking for sure. And I think it's not like you're going to need, 3 or 4 pairs of shorts and T-shirts. You don't really need to have a spare change of clothes. As long as you got your socks and your jocks covered, the outside isn't too bad. And I think also, the materials of your clothing is another really important one. If you're going to wear cotton, then you might have to take 2 shirts because the shirt you wore yesterday is going to be disgusting and it's going to stink and it probably isn't even going to be dry. Whereas if you take something like a lightweight merino, you could definitely wear that for a few days and it's not going to be too bad.
Merino's a good one for that because you can wear it over and over and it doesn't get stinky and it feels all right when it's wet. Synthetics, I know you're probably not a big synthetics person.
I'm not anti-synthetics, but I just don't really like how they feel. I always just feel like I'm wearing Glad wrap and even if it's not tight and it feels yuck to me.
Yeah, okay. I quite like just a heavy-duty nylon shirt for hiking.
Yeah, right.
I find that to be durable.
They have those things like Dry Light. Is that what that material's called? Is it called Dry Light or am I just making that up?
Of stuff out there,
and it's like a real soft t-shirt, like
yes, it's probably the t-shirt, softer t-shirt's usually a polyester, whereas the harder one's usually a nylon. Nylon's a bit harder wearing, which is what I usually wear because you got the collar for sun protection and everything. But I'm a big one for just one pair of clothes. It's going to get smelly. You can get a rinse. It might be wet when you put it on the next morning, but it's going to be wet 10 minutes into your hike anyway.
That's something I like about merino though, is that it dries quite quickly, especially the ultralight stuff.
Yeah, merino's good. Yep.
And on that, when we're talking about undies and socks, Sam as well, she gave me this hot tip because she was doing the Larapinta for like the 50 millionth time. And she was saying how she packs something like 2 pairs of merino socks and 2 pairs of undies. And that's it for the whole time. Yep. And it's like you wear one, you wash and dry one. On the back of your pack, you chuck it on a carabiner and it's flapping there in the sun and the wind or whatever. It's fresh and ready to go the next day.
Yeah. And on washing, dry bags, keep stuff dry.
Yeah.
Or even a Ziploc bag maybe, but that can also become a little wash bag.
Yeah, that's true.
Your undies. You don't need a small bag for that. So you can wash them as you go, hang them on the outside. Especially if it's in a humid environment, it's a bit harder, but somewhere like the Larapinta Trail where it's dry, your undies and socks will be dry. Doesn't bode well for the person walking behind you with their undies in their face all day. But
we all wear undies. We all wear undies.
We're all on the same height.
They're clean. And I think layers as well. Obviously layers is important, are important. But that's all a part of prepping for your trip, checking the weather, being aware of the environment that you're going in. And if it's not going to get cold overnight or not drop real low, then don't worry about taking a wind cheater or, a jacket or something like that. I mean, there's always maybe a chance, but in the case where it does get unexpectedly cold, just wrap yourself up in your sleeping bag.
Exactly. That's what I've always thought.
Go to bed earlier. It's
if it's a real around that big bulky jumper, then you probably don't need it. And if you do, you've got to, put yourself in that situation. What would I do if I was out there? Like we mentioned earlier in the episode, what would I do if it suddenly, or say to my wife, if the temperature just randomly drops 20 degrees below expected, which is probably never going to happen. But if it did, what would you do? And you've got your sleeping bag.
That's exactly right.
So,
and I think it's quite easy, especially with if you're going to places that you're not familiar with. There's so much information online where you can check out temperature averages for the period of time you've gone away for like the last 20 years or whatever. So it's not like if you're planning well, it's not like you're going to be really caught out.
Yeah, that's right. Although today's weather's all over the place, but you can be reasonably well versed before you go.
Yeah. Sock liners are another one. Like some people seem to froth off sock liners, but I'm just like, I've never needed them. I've just worn a good pair of socks.
I used to use them, but I think that back when I had heavier leather boots.
Yeah, okay.
But I think if you get good socks and match with shoes, so your shoes and your socks combination kind of match. So you haven't got lightweight shoes with big heavy leather boots. Lightweight socks with heavy leather boots. You've got a thick sock for heavy boots, et cetera, et cetera. If you do that right and your boots are worn in, then I think you should be right. And if you do get hot spots or anything, stop and deal with them before they become blisters.
Definitely.
And you should be able to get through it. So, but each to their own. Sock liners can help with blisters if you're particularly prone. But usually it would be because maybe the boots don't fit properly. But yeah.
So before we move on to boots, the double up as well, it's something like a buff. I don't think you can go wrong with a buff because that is – like I think, I've written a whole bunch of stuff here, but it's scarf, bandana, beanie, balaclava, headband.
Pot holder.
Pot holder.
Well, you can insulate when you hold the pot.
Legend.
Just be careful because I found out mine was synthetic. Didn't think about it and realised there's a few holes in my beanie now. But if you need to hold a hot pot or a cup or something, that'll insulate a little bit, just not on the fire. Yeah. You can get merino wool once again, which would be better in that instance.
Yeah, merino buff's amazing.
Also, pillow slip. So
genius.
Dry bag full of the clothes or something you're not wearing. I used to sleep on that, which would be quite sweaty.
Crunchy. Oh, sweaty, yeah.
Put your buff over the top of that and you got a pillow.
That's amazing. Yeah, you can't go past a buff. 100 million uses.
Yeah. Buff. There's other brands out there too, but for those that don't know, the buff is just a tube of fabric, right? And you can put it on your head, around your neck, however. It's got a million different ways to use it. So yeah.
There was some. I was obviously, when we were going into this episode, just reading and seeing what some other people out there in the world of adventures talk about. And some people have also talked about, a pair of socks can double as mittens if push comes to shove in a pinch. Socks can double as mittens. If you did pack an extra T-shirt, that can double as something like a buff. If you didn't have a buff, you can tie it around your head, around your neck, all that sort of stuff. So again, it's just a matter of, do I actually need this? And is there other stuff that I have in my little clothing stash that will do the trick and can double up? So
yep, absolutely. Now, hiking boots. Always used to be, 10 plus years ago, when I was sort of getting into the industry, it was always like people said you need heavy duty hiking boots.
Yeah. But you must have full leather Scarpas.
Yeah. And look, there is a place for them. I've still got my Scarpa SLs and they are pretty comfortable, but geez, they're heavy.
Yeah.
And if I do a long walk, I know about it at the end of the day. But the technology's come a long way with boots now, design, and you can get away with pretty lightweight boots. And there's also a big move towards people just using, say, like a trail runner for hiking. It's just
admittedly, I'm one of those people.
Okay, all right. Yeah. So I've always said there's nothing wrong with that, but the thing you need to be aware of is that hiking, that trail runner is going to wear out a lot quicker than a leather boot. So there's a trade-off there. You buy more shoes, but they're lighter and perhaps more comfortable to walk in, but you don't have the heavy weight, sort of stiff nature of the leather boots. I find with the leather boots, if I know I'm doing a hike and I haven't done a hike for a while in them, I want to wear them a little bit in the lead up and almost break them in again and get my feet used to them again because they're a heavy shoe. But you don't need to worry about that with trail runners.
Don't buy hiking boots before a trip. Make sure that the shoes that you're wearing on a hiking trip are Old Faithfuls.
Yep.
And if you don't have Old Faithfuls, you don't need to be going out and buying boots. I think that's ultimately a takeaway from that, is that if you've got a decent trail shoe or even a really good solid sneaker, depending on what hiking you're actually doing, you don't need to rush out and buy crazy boots.
Yeah, there's some caveats there on the environment that you're walking in. Larapinta Trail would bring that up again.
Yeah.
I would probably not do that without something a little bit heavy duty because it can just tear shoes apart. So a pair of trail runners, I'm sure other people out there have done it and will have a view on this, but I used to work in Alice Springs in the outdoor industry there, and we saw so many shoes that just got torn up partway through because the ground is so hot. So there's some things to consider about where you're going, the environment you're walking on. If it's so really rocky, and sharp, it's going to tear a pair of trail runners apart much quicker than a heavier duty hike piece. There's always a trade-off. You just kind of need to understand where you're at.
I think it's also know your feet and know your body, because there's no way that I would ever really – I mean, I had a pair of Keen Targies a couple of years ago, but I can't wear them for very long at all. I don't know. I have really broad feet and my feet get really hot. So wearing any sort of mid boot or more, it's damn near impossible.
You're always in bare feet. You take your shoes off whenever you can.
Yeah, I do. I'm always in bare feet and I do take my shoes off whenever I can. But I would probably more readily, and I have done much to the dismay of other people that I've gone hiking with, I'll hike in a pair of sandals.
Oh, right. Okay.
Like I've got Earth Runner sandals, which people may have seen on like product reviews or whatever in some of that I've done in the past. But I would prefer to wear Earth Runner sandals with a pair of like wool toe socks or something in winter over a pair of shoes, just because that, as weird as it may seem, that's the only real way that I can get through a walk feeling happy and not having to think about my feet. Like if at any point my feet become uncomfortable, then it makes it really difficult to keep going.
Okay. So maybe the takeaway is you've got to do what's right for you.
Do what's right for you. Know your feet. Don't feel like you have to, be subscribing to hiking boots or whatever if that's not quite right for you, or if you've never really worn them before, don't think that you have to have them.
If you've got weak ankles, then you might want to have support. If it's not really an issue you've had, then I couldn't do it in sandals, but that's just me. But each of their own. Don't just read somewhere that says you need this. Have a think about what you need for your individual makeup and comfort. So
for sure.
Extra shoes. Don't take big heavy shoes for camp. Just take a pair of flip-flops or Crocs and nice and light. Just strap on the
Crocs
outside
are
of
so ugly, but you really can't beat them for things like that, can you?
And they offer toe protection, and you can clip on the outside of
They're super breathable and they're really big. So your feet have time, like, you know, if you've been hiking all day, your feet are probably wet and swollen and a bit sweaty and gross. Crocs are great.
Yeah, just need to let them dry out and relax for a bit.
Yeah.
New gear. There's always new gear. No, I mean, I think we're guilty in this industry. We walk through the shop and, Snowy's shop, and we look at all the new gear and go, that's awesome, this is awesome, that's awesome. But when it boils down to it, and this goes for hiking and camping, when it boils down to it, you don't actually need a lot of what's out there. It's all very cool, but you could probably strip a lot of it out. Really prevalent in the hiking realms that if you take all the cool stuff with you, you're going to have a very heavy pack and you can actually strip it down to something pretty simple.
I think if hiking is your hobby, do you know what I mean? If that's just like anybody who has a hobby, upgrading and getting new stuff and whatever, and that's your vibe and that's fine. And I know, again, I'm going to talk about Sam. I know that she's often collecting new tents or upgrading or whatever because she'll go on a trip and then she wants to save grams and, and that's completely fine. But I think if you're an occasional hiker or you're someone who's just starting out, don't feel like you have to go out and buy like the newest, fanciest, latest thing. Like, as you said, Ziploc bags, there are always things that you can actually use to get you through a trip that really doesn't cost you that much.
I think avid hikers have Sam would have a shed full of stuff. Because
I think she's at least got a wardrobe in a spare room, a full wardrobe thingy.
I've got a bit, but I haven't done much of it lately. But you do just kind of, I don't know, when the thought of saving 50 grams or 100 grams is a big thing, and before you know it, you've bought a new stove. Well,
like Sam said, if you can shave 200 grams off, that's a block of chocolate.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I think I use that one a fair bit. But I think also when it comes to new gear is don't go on a trip with new gear that you haven't already used.
Absolutely. And make sure you know how to use the stove.
Your gear. Not just don't wear new boots, but make sure you know how to use your stove. Make sure you've used your pots. You've tried to cook a few things in it, all of that sort of jazz. Like when Lisa and I went away, is another Snowy's person here that Ben obviously knows, but we went to, she picked up a new pot set. And it was awesome. The pots were great. Everything nested. It was beautiful. But I think it was our first run. And I'm sure she'll correct me if I'm wrong here, but we had oats, like quick oats in the morning.
Yep.
And it started to stick on the bottom and we couldn't get it off, and it's anodized aluminium, so you don't want to scrub it too hard and things like that. And I think it was one of the first mornings of our trip when we were using them. And then after the fact, we found out that it's actually better to boil your water first. And if you're doing something like packets of soup or you're putting packet food in or doing oats, you boil your water first and then you put your oats in. Yep. And I think if that's sort of something that you have familiarity with, or you try out your new gear and stuff when you're at home, you'll be more aware of how to get the best use out of it on the trail, and then you won't end up with a pot that's got this residue stuck to it for the rest of your trip. That's can, potentially cause more issues. So that's just one example.
Same with rice and pasta, same thing. Yeah. Excuse me. I think like a jet boil, I don't think they recommend you cook rice in it, but I know someone who said, I just boil the water first and then put the rice in, because then the water's boiling and it's not allowing it to settle on the bottom.
Yeah,
if you
exactly
slowly
right.
heat it up, it congeals on the bottom and burns. So have a trial run. Don't trial on the trail.
Yeah.
And it gives you an opportunity to throw out the bits you don't need as well. No trial on the trail. Write that one down.
Love it.
Okay, cookware. You just touched on cookware, but that's one spot where you can have multiple uses. So I use stainless steel gear, for example, a stainless steel cup. You can boil water in the stainless steel cup, so it kind of becomes a little mini billy and a thing that you drink out of. You could cook in a stainless steel bowl. You could, if at a pinch, fry something on a stainless steel plate. Have a think whether you actually need a cup, bowl and a plate, because in most cases a bowl is probably going to do
double
everything
as a
the
cup.
Plate or potentially a cup would do anyway. So
a plate and a cup and a bowl could all come from the same thing if it's the right sort of size. And
and it depends what you're cooking.
Yeah.
If if you're not cooking a steak or big bits of bread, then probably a 20-25 centimetre round plate is excessive.
Yeah, totally.
If you're just cooking rehydrated meals or pasta, then a bowl and a cup.
And if you're doing dehydrated meals, you might not even need a bowl. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, well, because you eat out of the packets. Yeah,
that's exactly
which
right.
Then become bin bags.
So all you need to do is boil your water. And if you've got like an all-in-one cooking system, like a jet boil or MSR wind burner, for example, they are really efficient at boiling water for cups of tea and coffee and all that sort of jazz, but also boiling water for your dehydrated meals. So you don't actually need any cookware. A long-handled spoon, that'd serve you right through your beverages and dehydrated meals.
So even
you can drinking from your drink bottle, for example, you don't even might get away with not even having a cup.
You need a coffee cup though.
Maybe. Unless you just did it all in your jet ball and you just drink out of your jet ball.
Oh, you could do that, I suppose.
Yeah.
You just have to clean
it after a real minimalist.
After your porridge though. But then you'd have to carry more water to clean it.
That's true.
Each morning before you made
wormhole.
Yeah. But don't just assume because the mess kits out there they all come with a cup, bowl and a plate and a knife, fork and a spoon. Don't assume that that's what you need. Have a look at what you're cooking.
Do you really need it?
And do you really need it?
And if you didn't have it, what would you do without it?
Yeah. And what are you cooking in? Have you got a saucepan? Do you need your saucepan and a bowl?
Yeah.
Can they do the same
thing?
Same with knife, fork, spoon. You can get sporks that are all 3 in 1.
Yeah.
So you could use just one instead of all 3. Knife, do you really need a knife? Have you got a pocket knife? If you've got a pocket knife, you might not need a knife.
Totally.
So
that's another good
people
point.
Are probably looking going, I'm going to save myself 8 grams. But if you save yourself 8 grams,
but if you save yourself 8 grams, that's exactly right.
That's 80 grams. How much? A block of chocolate is 200 grams. So it's half a block of chocolate.
Still.
Anyway,
Mars bar maybe.
It all adds up. But yeah, Mars bar, good one.
Gas as well. A lot of people might be over carrying gas, which, might not necessarily be that heavy, but it's also sometimes the size. Mm-hmm. You can get those little, I know Jetboil will do a gas gauge where it just screws onto the top of your gas thing, you hold it up and it'll tell you how many grams you've got. And it's pretty easy to work out if that'll see you through a trip.
Yep.
So that can be helpful.
You can do a bit of a test too if you're really geeky like me at home. You weigh a gas canister and then cook what you want to cook with it and then weigh it afterwards and you know how much gas you've used to cook it and times that by, you're laughing. You'll appreciate it. Lauren laughs. But this could save you grams. But that's what I do with I take a multi-fuel stove because I can be very specific with how much fuel I need. So you're still laughing. I know that I'm
just not surprised, Ben. I'm not surprised.
So I know that whatever meal I'm cooking, I'm going to use roughly how many grams of fuel and I add a little bit more to it and then I just carry what I need. And with multi-fuel, I know I've banged on about it with camping, but same with hiking. I'm only carrying the fuel that I need and not an extra canister in case it almost runs out. Because even the gauge, I'm not actually sure how accurate they are. They probably give a pretty good representation, but you probably don't want to get to the point where you're running that gas. You wouldn't be running it down
to grams, but it will give you an idea.
Yeah, that's right.
With Toiletries, Wilderness Wash. I love Wilderness Wash. You can't really go past it. Body wash, dishwashing, clothes, laundry wash, shampoo, conditioner. It would literally do everything.
Yep.
It's biodegradable. It's sort of, obviously you don't go into a natural water course and use it, but it is ultimately water course friendly. I think I can't remember what the certification is on it, but you don't need to carry all that stuff. Just a little thing of Wilderness Wash.
You're not going to come out of the river smelling like jojoba and coconut, but you're going to be clean.
Yeah, exactly. And
I don't even know if I said that right.
I don't know. I think jojoba. Anyway, I don't know. Whatever.
Sidetracked again.
I think toothbrush and toothpaste is obviously a given. Please don't tell me that it's not something that you take. No.
I thought you were going to say, please don't tell me you cut your toothbrush in half. I get stick all the time.
Oh my God, you cut your toothbrush in half.
Also because I want to,
but you're like a big dude. Your hands are huge. What, do you just pinch it with your thumb and your forefinger and you're like,
controlling a toothbrush. It's a small item. I don't need a good grip. It's not like I'm building a hammer into something. But seriously though.
It's a shiv in case you get attacked by a drop bear.
The toothbrush is 20 centimeters long, right? Yeah. So that means I need a bag that's 20 odd centimeters long to fit it in when everything else is probably only 10 centimeters long. So if I want to fit it in a little bag, I cut it down to fit it in there.
I see.
Bonus is I've saved myself 3 or 4 grams in the process. So,
You could probably get a little mini hinge from Bunnings and make it like a foldable toothbrush.
That'd make it more heavy though. Now you're just being silly.
Okay. But seriously, aside from a toothbrush and some toothpaste and Wilderness Wash, you really don't need anything else. I would go so far as to say you probably don't even need deodorant because you're going to stink. Like you're stinking anyway. You're out in the middle of nowhere. You're going for a hike. You're trying to be free and wild.
Yeah. If your plan is to stop off in towns and go to pubs all the time, then maybe chuck one in. Maybe. But if you're out there with the animals and other people who are doing the same thing, then no one's going to notice.
Yeah,
Don't worry about it. I like your comment here. You're going to stink whatever you do. Do you really need anything else? That was on the next page talking about toiletries. Do you really need anything else?
It's true.
moisturisers and things.
And pack covers.
Yeah, look, I've carried a pack cover once on a hike, and I don't think I've actually ever taken it out of its pack, and I probably had it for 15 years. I put everything in dry bags in the bag.
Yeah, I had a pack once that had the built-in pack cover that tucked in the bottom, and I didn't even know it was there. And I had it for years, and I used it in all sorts of weather, and I didn't even know it was there.
Carried that extra 100 grams for no reason at all.
Exactly. That could half a chocolate bar.
Yeah.
But it's, I think in seriousness though, if you're talking about multi-use items, something like a poncho tarp, if you haven't seen my product review of the poncho tarp, get on and have a look at that because
Did you put it on? I haven't seen that one.
Haven't you? Yeah, it's from ages ago. It got a strong reaction. Let's just put it that way.
What, of laughter?
Yeah.
Because you put it on.
Because I put it on. But anyway, that I don't know if I've did the actual poncho tarp, but I did do like a rain poncho or whatever. And they're designed to go over your backpack as well as you. So you don't have to take a rain jacket and a pack cover. It's just one single thing. It also doubles as a ground sheet. If you want to sit down somewhere and it's wet, you can just take it out and put it down. You can sit on it. It doubles as a tarp. If you don't want to take a tent or anything, you're doing ultra light, you can string it all up. And, that's your tarp there and your shelter for sleeping in. It's multiple use. And it's even if you're not using it in wet weather, you still might be able to get some uses out of it at least in dry season as well.
As a shelter, it's you've got your tent and that can get, if it's hot, your tent can get pretty hot. Yeah. But you could set the tarp up as shade to sit under next to your tent. If it's rainy and you want to cook, it's safer to cook under that as a shelter than it would be in the vestibule of your tent. So
even if you want to set up somewhere to cook lunch or you want a lunch stop and it's raining, but it's not going to be raining later on, you're just waiting for it to pass even and you're not wanting to set up a tent. So many uses.
Yeah, that's
so many uses of that
option. Yep.
Sort of like a buff. It's like the Swiss Army knife of raincoat type things.
Funnily enough, I've never carried one, so maybe I should get one.
Yeah.
Full first aid kit. Now, I think a first aid kit is a given. You've got to have a first aid kit, but don't just buy one off the shelf and go, I've got to take this first aid kit. Get it and have a look at what's in there because there's probably stuff you can strip out. Quite often there's a little pack of Ziploc bags and stuff, but you've already got Ziploc bags if you need it. I can't think what else.
Like you don't need a burn module if you're hiking in the middle of summer. You need a snake bite kit. Do you know what I mean? Like
that's right. Yeah.
You'd swap that out because you're not having campfires or you're not having little fires. So you don't carry a burn module around with you.
Yeah. I actually just make my own. I get a dry bag and I top up bits as I go.
That's really good.
It was really full for a recent long trip that we did, but for hiking, I strip a heap of that out.
Yeah.
Compression bandages are one of the best things you can have, I think. They're really versatile. I think if we mentioned like a GPS or PLB, we did mention that very early on, but it doubles GPS. But a PLB, some sort of safety device, depending on how you're traveling. If you're solo,
because this episode was gear you don't need, I didn't add a PLB because you do need it, right? Or are you saying that you don't need it?
I've just veered off of the focus of this episode. So you pulled me back on track now.
I genuinely was curious as to whether or not you're suggesting that you don't need one.
Well, I guess it depends. If you've got your phone and you know you're going to have phone reception, then you probably don't need it.
And you're not being like in the middle of whoop whoop.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So I guess don't always assume you need to carry a PLB. I carry one anyway because generally if you're hiking, you're probably not going to be out of phone reception or you're not always going to have it. Yeah. And your PLB is always one of those things you need when you least think you need it. So
having said that, I was actually talking to a guy sometime last year over the phone, a customer who was just mountain biking in the Adelaide Hills, like less than 15 minutes from the closest suburb, came off his bike while he was on a trail and he flipped down the hill a bit, but his bike and, his backpack had sort of come off in the tumble and he couldn't get to it and he'd broken his leg. So it's like if he'd physically had a PLB on him somehow, instead of having his phone, I think he maybe had a handlebar bag or something. There was some reason why he was actually separated from his bike and his phone. And he wasn't it took him a fair while in obviously significant agony to try and get back up there to access his phone. Yeah. Okay. So I think in a situation where you're like, I'm literally a stone's throw from my house and bustling suburbia, it doesn't necessarily exclude situations where a PLB might come in handy.
Yeah, I guess PLB is a bit like first aid kit. You probably want to err on the side of just taking it because it's one of those things that you goes against what we said earlier. You're probably not going to need it.
Yeah.
But if you do,
yeah,
it's kind of a situation where you can't do without it.
Well, I guess, one of those questions is what would happen if I don't have this and a situation came up and I needed it, but I didn't have it. With most other stuff, you'll be like, oh, well, I would make do or I'd buy. But a PLB, I guess, is where that question would be like, oh, okay, pack it,
Yep.
But other, like maybe just a quick rapid fire of extra, like spare things. If you have to be like, oh, maybe I have this spare, no.
If you're not sure, you probably don't need it.
Yeah, if you have to R, get rid of it.
Find something else that'll do the job.
A chair.
Don't
need to take
There's
a chair.
hiking chairs out there.
There are hiking chairs out there and they are awesome, but you don't need one. Maybe if you have mobility issues or, you can't get down to the ground as easy as you once did, they're really super handy because it means that people can rest more efficiently. But if you can sit on the ground or a log or a tree, do it.
Yep. Might be different situations for some. I've never carried a chair. But
me either.
Yeah.
Survival tools. You don't need to take survival tools. I mean, a PLB is a survival tool and a map and a compass, obviously, but outside of a map and a compass, as you back up in a PLB, you don't need.
So by survival tool, you mean something that's like it's got a blade and a flint.
I just mean anything, if you've got a PLB and you've got a map and a compass, it's not like you're going to have to be, doing good old SBS alone series out in the wilderness for weeks until someone has to find you. Like if you're prepared, you don't need survival tools. I mean, obviously, unless you're like a doomsday prepper or you're a survivalist and that's what the purpose of your trip. But if you're just multi-day hiking, you don't need survival tools.
Just some little like a pocket knife with a few basic tools. You don't need the Swiss Champ that's got 101 different things on it. You probably want, just a knife, maybe some scissors, a few basics to make some repairs.
Hiking poles are a bit up in the air, like if you need them or not. I think it depends. Depends on the kind of hiking you're doing and if you do need that functionality. I've always been, why on earth would you need hiking poles? But Sam, I'm going to flag her with this episode. Listen to this episode. We talk about you the whole time. She was saying that she invested in them because she was doing some really, what's the word? What am I trying to say? Like uneven ground, sort of doing technical hiking. And obviously you're wearing a heavy bag and you it's more for a balance sake. It's not to help propel you. It's not for anything. It's literally just to help you maintain your balance when you're carrying a big bag with heavy water and whatever, and you're going through crazy ground.
Have you used them?
I don't know. I have once and not since because I just feel like, Edward Scissorhands, you have these extra, what do I do with these things?
Look, I'm on Sam's side there.
Some people love them.
I think they're, you can get by without them. You don't have to have them. They're not weight in your pack. They're in your hands, but I think there's so many benefits to hiking poles.
Yeah, right. I suppose if you're not buying like a more entry-level budget ones that pack huge and weigh a fair bit, it probably doesn't matter if you have them and you take them with you. But some people have tents as well, ultralight tents that need to be set up with, they double.
This is the multi-use thing. They're the poles for your shelter.
Yeah.
But for me, the whole body feels better because your arms are still, when you're hiking, holding your pack. If you've got poles, you've got 2 more points of contact with the ground, take some weight off your legs.
You're
helping to propel yourself forward. Okay. Your shoulders feel better because they're moving. I'm all for hiking poles. You don't have to have them, but I'm all for them.
Okay, there you go. You've heard it here first, folks.
Yeah. I'm with Sam.
So tunnel tents, I would say you don't need a tunnel tent unless you're doing like specific, alpine or for some reason you're needing an aerodynamic tunnel tent because you're going to be in mad winds. Don't get a tunnel tent because it's really difficult to erect them and set them up on a lot of hiking places. If you can't get pegs in or you have platforms for pitching your tent, tunnel tents generally aren't freestanding, so they're not going to be able to be put up without being pegged in, and I think it just can limit you.
So the freestanding ones, by that you mean like they've usually got a cross pole and you can literally put them up and then move the whole tent around. Yep. And if you can't get a peg in it, you crawl in and you weigh it down overnight. And with hiking, you're not usually leaving it set up during the day. So you've weighed it down, you get up in the morning and take it down. So it's much more versatile.
I mean, I'm not knocking tunnel tents if you have a purpose for them, but I think especially if you're starting out and you're wanting to get a tent, maybe just don't get a tunnel tent.
The exception being what we talked about earlier with poncho tarp and your hiking poles, then that kind of becomes not really a tunnel tent, but you can create a shelter there. So that's not freestanding, but you can minimal pegs, I suppose. With basic shelter like that. Repair kits, just take duct tape and a few cable ties.
Literally anything.
I do
if
usually
your pole snap, duct tape. If your jacket rips, duct tape. If your tent fly rips, duct tape. If your drink bottle leaks, duct tape.
Yeah. I often take just a little bit of needle and thread. But in saying that, when I think about it now, I've never actually used it on the trail, I don't think.
Duct tape.
Duct tape will get you by.
For sure.
Yeah. Luxury items, plush mat, pillow. I mean, if you really want it. Like we mentioned before about pillow solution with
stuffing a dry sack. Water bladder. I've heard people do that.
Put your buff over that. That's a
water bladder, or even if your water bladder is sort of empty, you can blow it up a little bit. And like you can sleep on a yoga mat or a Z mat or whatever. You don't need a big mat. Yeah. But I'm also of the mind that if you go hiking and you're not comfortable and you didn't get a good night's sleep, you're not going to want to go again. So it's all good and well when you're starting out to just see how you go. You don't need to go out and buy a mat. See how you go, see what works for you. Don't feel pressured to buy expensive or plush or carry big heavy mats or the super ultralight several $100 options. But also make sure that you're having an experience that's enjoyable for you, because hiking doesn't have to be sad.
It doesn't have to be uncomfortable. No. I think a mat is one place where depending on your level of comfort or your need for comfort is one spot where you can spend a little bit more or invest a bit more in weight in your pack. Because if you can get 8 hours of really good sleep because you've carried an extra 200 grams for the mat, then that's going to bode well for the rest of the trip. Yeah,
I 100% agree with that.
Now, we haven't mentioned packs in here, but I'll just say that you don't need a pack with all the bells, whistles, pockets and everything.
100% agree.
You can get by, and my favourite pack is an old canvas sack with a decent harness on it. It's got no extra pockets. Everything's organised in dry bags inside the pack. So if it's raining when I get to camp, I can pull everything out. It sits on the ground. It's all dry because it's all in dry bags and it's all organised in colour-coded dry bags.
Yeah.
I haven't got all the extra pockets and things because every zip, every bit of fabric, all of that adds weight, and you can have a pack that weighs 3.5, 4 kilos.
Yeah.
Whereas just a canvas sack, I think mine weighs about 1.5. And you can get some that are, Sam's probably got one that weighs about 700 grams or something.
When like Sam recently, or not recently, but when she did upgrade her pack not long ago, her whole pack weighs something like ludicrous, like 400 grams or less. And I remember her showing it to me and I was like, what do you mean? It literally just looks like just a big rectangular sack with straps.
Yeah.
But you genuinely, I think it was Z packs or something. Yep. You genuinely don't need anything with bells and whistles. And obviously, or not obviously, but I find that ultralight packs that do come with the bells and whistles, they're more of a structured bag. They have zips, lots of pockets, whatever. The ultralightness comes in the sacrificing of the durability of the fabrics to cut grams, whereas all of those zips and buttons and pockets and whatever add the weight anyway. So the fabric has to cut, which means you don't end up having a durable fabric. Yep. So you're better off going with just a basic bag without those bells and whistles that's in a slightly heavier fabric, because you'll be saving weight anyway and you have a pack that lasts you a long time.
Yeah. And the really light ones often don't have much structure. They're just a sack, but you get a bit more support in how you pack everything inside of it that then creates the support. But that's getting into the ultra lightweight realm. Yeah. And I'm not an ultra lightweight hiker, but I'm sure there's heaps of people out there who are and have heaps to say.
Yeah, for sure.
I think I don't have anything else to add. I'm just racking my mind thinking, what else do I do on a hike? But less is best, I think.
Yeah. Don't trial on the trail.
There we go.
Less
We've got
best.
2 catch lines. Well, I'm hoping this sort of sparks a heap of conversation on the Facebook group, both from lightweight hikers, but also the ultra lightweight hiking community, because newbies to hiking would love to hear your advice on just saving grams and enjoying it more while they're on the trail. So as we mentioned at the start of the episode, if you haven't done so, please subscribe, because there's heaps more cool or awesome information like this episode on our podcast. And I think that's it for today.
All right.
We'll see you next time. Thanks for tuning in.
Thanks. See you later.
See you later.